Asasi Manusia Pertubuhan Bangsa-Bangsa Bersatu mendedahkan serangan Israel ke atas Assalamualaikum, hello and welcome to ASEAN Kita. I'm Amirul Aiman and joining me is my co-host Farhan Hakimi. ASEAN Kita is a special series where we explore the immense potential of ASEAN as a region, and in this series we celebrate the cultures, innovation and the potential of Southeast Asia. And each episode will spotlight ASEAN countries, its cultural identity, its uniqueness and collective role in shaping the region's future.
Yeah, and for today's episode, we will delve into a topic that is central to ASEAN's future, which is how ASEAN can be the next big thing. And joining us to unpack these questions is a distinguished leader who has been at the forefront of ASEAN's evolution, Tan Sri Syed Hamid Alba, a seasoned diplomat, former Malaysian foreign minister. And so let's begin this exciting conversation with Tan Sri. Good morning, Tan Sri. It is an honor to have you here. And perhaps you can share some of your experience as a seasoned diplomat and former chair of ASEAN. How would you assess ASEAN's journey so far, and has the region met the expectations of its founding vision?
Thank you, Farhan, for the question as well as the introduction. I think the most important thing is that Malaysia considers ASEAN as the cornerstone of our foreign policy. And then whatever we want to do in the external dimension, we always consider our position in ASEAN. And definitely ASEAN as an association of 10 member countries give us that added strength and resilience of the region, give us more confidence. So, and I think we are fortunate to see that the evolution of ASEAN has been remarkable. We have gone very well. Of course, there are challenges, but those challenges have made us to be able to play our role and play our part. I think when ASEAN was formed, the intention of the founding fathers then was to see ASEAN as a region is respected, credible, and we do not want it to be a platform for big power rivalry. Of course, this has changed now, big power rivalry. So that has benefited us a lot. So I think if you look in terms of stability, security, economic cooperation, it's a success story. The only thing that people tend to talk negatively about ASEAN usually is on our political and social integration. That part, there are issues because ASEAN has never had a common position on politics or on social integration. That's still a long way to go. But it is better to be a part of a region of 600 over million people than to be Malaysia of 30 such over million people. So it's good for us, positive.
Tan Sri, you mentioned ASEAN has its own challenges. In your opinion, which specific area is these challenges? Is it political or economical or maybe social, Tan Sri?
I think I look at, in the international front, we have never expressed our collective view. So even if there is a global crisis anywhere, ASEAN to be standing, looking at the things, in each country will say its own thing. We do not come together to say this is the ASEAN position. So I think that is the challenges that I'm talking about. How do we create unity within us? How do we have a shared vision of our future? And I think this relates a lot to how we want to see ourselves playing a role in a global affairs. If we don't have a common position, we won't be able to play a role in a global affairs. But this does not mean that ASEAN as a regional organization has not succeeded. We have succeeded, but we still have to take greater stride, greater move for us to take a united position on certain important issues that is happening, like human rights, climate change. All these things are global issues that we should be able to, because we have got problems about deforestation, we have got human trafficking, illegal logging, all kind of things. So where we can work and show that we have leadership.
True.
At present, that I think that seems to be missing. People tend not to see, oh, ASEAN is playing safe too much, So, but I think it's not playing safe. It's to change a culture is not easy. Each ASEAN is so diverse. Development, we have got gaps between ASEAN. Our political development also, there are gaps in ASEAN. Our democracy also, there are gaps between ASEAN. Different level of economic development, different level of political development. So I think it will still take time, but I think we can see at the end of it the great benefit that we can achieve and gain from being together and try to have a common position on certain issues.
And I think many also regard ASEAN as the most stable region, and also, for each of its nation is at least not segregated in most issues, right? And also many describe ASEAN as a sleeping giant. So what, in your view, will it take for ASEAN to become a truly global leader?
I think, I do not know whether we are sleeping giant, but we are definitely a big group, an important group, because we have, in terms of human resources, in terms of, natural resources, we are very rich in everything. So, but I think what we have shown anyway in the global affairs, because you're more interested, because your generation, ASEAN, is population, 60% of its population are below 35, So it's a very young population. If you want to be there, we cannot play a passive role. That means we have to change our position to be sometimes more radical, sometimes proactive. Then people, in every global affairs, we are there. We have got our position. You see, ASEAN has got the advantage because we are not involved in many of the crises.
In what ways we can do that?
We can do that as a facilitator, as a peace builder, as a bridge where we can bring, the parties in conflict together.
Yeah.
So if you look at ASEAN since as independent of the various countries and since our formation, we really have no physical conflict or military conflict except for the, the Cambodian time, that ultimately was resolved. But we have got some conflict that we should be showing the leadership that we can solve it. We have not been able to solve. There is like, environment issue or Myanmar issue. So all this type of thing. But people have would like to see ASEAN have that. So that especially the big powers, when you're dealing with the big powers, there is a tendency for hegemony, there is a tendency to dominate. But individually, we can't play a role. But as a region, we are important. We are a great exporter of, some of our countries are industrialized. Like Malaysia, semiconductor, we are at the top of the world, microchips, all these things. So Vietnam is doing very well, Indonesia is doing well, and Singapore is doing well. So I think it's about time that we should set aside and look at the collective interest of ASEAN. Even in the case of the South China Sea, so we should deal it together, because if one ASEAN country or few ASEAN countries have got problem, we should take it as an ASEAN project. Together we can fight our. So that's how I look at it. So cannot be passive. You must be there in front.
That's really interesting. It's interesting that you mentioned that ASEAN is a large bloc with huge potential, but with 60% of ASEAN's population is under 35. How can this young demographic drive innovation and global competitiveness? Are the governments in ASEAN bloc doing enough to nurture these young people's potential? That's
my own view. This is my own view. I think we have not empowered enough the young, the youth. You know,
Why do you think so?
I think it's about time that we empower the youth in terms of education and in terms of skill training. And the youth are, you know, they are exposed to things and they are very good at it. I think all over the world, the youth are playing a role. Except in our part, the youth is still at the background, whether in the political area, in the economic area. So when I see any young leaders, whether in the economic field or in entrepreneurship, I like that, because then there is a future for the, you know, for the country. But if you rely on the old narrative without giving empowerment means that you give opportunity, let them handle the challenges that the future generation will inherit, and this I think is important.
And yeah, regarding the South China Sea and the U.S.-China rivalry with the growing tensions in the region, right? You know, some people in the Philippines, I've read that they said that we are not doing enough to help them. How can actually ASEAN maintain unity and assert itself on the global stage without being overshadowed by major powers? And what we can do to help, you know, those who are in need of help?
No, I think it's a question of not being overshadowed. It's a question of being there.
Okay.
You must be seen to have a meaning in your presence, in your statement. There must be a political will, you know, and you must have a shared vision, you know, that ASEAN is big. You know, we are bigger than the US. And I think we were even bigger than the European Union.
Yeah.
And we've got natural resources, not depleted. So I think it's about time that we must say, we embrace, but we do not want conflict to be brought into our doorsteps. You know, rivalry is, you know, is not good. Cooperation is good. I think we should play a role that, look, both China and US will benefit if they cooperate and work together for world peace, for security, for contributing to the, you know, to the world, to a better world that we are seeking for.
Actually, still within geopolitical dynamics in South China Sea issue, ASEAN has often been praised for its maintaining peace on the region, its neutrality. But are you saying that ASEAN should be more assertive in their stance towards South China Sea?
What is our interest? We must be assertive. If you want to play at the background, the major powers or the big powers are very assertive. You know, and we must not allow anybody, I think, major powers to place one of us against the other. You know, say for example, the overlapping claims in the South China Sea. You know, and they are court decision, and our relationship with China is very good. I think during my time, we got the deep declaration of the South China Sea. We promised there will be a conduct COC to be. Until now, we haven't resolved that. But ASEAN members cannot say, oh, the overlapping claim only between 4 countries and China. It's the whole, whatever happened in the South China Sea, how we resolved it, is for the benefit of ASEAN as a whole. So all of us must take a common position, help each other, augment each other, strengthen each other, and having a position. I think there is always a tendency for, you know, how do you deal with China that has become a great economic power, a great military power, that is more assertive in its foreign policy. We must also move with dictates and demand of time. We cannot say, oh, never mind, we get the benefit of the China punya bell policy and all sort of thing. But we also want to maintain our sovereignty. We want to maintain, I now don't like people to talk about non-interference, because this interference, while it is positive, it has also got its negative effect. So I prefer that we should, now ASEAN should have what I call a constructive interference. You know, constructive interference. Sometimes you have to interfere in order to assert your rights, and this is asserting our rights.
Right, Tan Sri, we have unpacked some fascinating insights into ASEAN's journey and its immense potential to become a global powerhouse. But there's still so much more to discuss with Tan Sri, but we will continue the conversation right after this break. Right, welcome back to ASEAN Kita. If you are just joining us, we are exploring how ASEAN can be the next big thing with our esteemed guest, Tan Sri Syed Hamid Albar. And before the break, we have discussed ASEAN's progress and its potential as a global leader. And let's continue the conversation by diving into some of the questions that we have not unpacked yet about ASEAN's diversity. And Tan Sri, ASEAN is very diverse, but also unequal, with stark economic disparities between members like Singapore and Laos. How can ASEAN ensure more inclusive growth to lift up its less developed members?
I think we have got a lot of policies within ASEAN where we can narrow the gap, narrow the gap through investment, through us investing in each other's country. I think we have made progress in terms of creating a more free trade area, less tariff, goods within ASEAN. Because some of the ASEAN countries are either landlocked, ada yang landlocked, or they are too small to make, But I think even countries like Brunei, they have taken advantage not only to depend on their oil and gas, but they have also developed an island together with the Chinese, develop an island where they want to make the container port and also I think where accessibility, So I think we should focus more on economics. It's easier for us to, and it will benefit the population. And I think at present, traveling within ASEAN country is still difficult, And then even to go to Myanmar, say for example, Myanmar and Thailand, they have got a free movement. The rest all have to apply for visa and also. So I think we must look at the impediment, focus on the impediment and get rid of them. Get rid of the impediment so the ASEAN will be seen as one. If you are not seen, as one, then it's very difficult. We do not have, we don't even make symbolic gestures. So there is a need for them, more discussion, more. I think I used to say, to try to sell the idea of one ASEAN, and did a song on one ASEAN and all sort of thing. And I think Malaysia is a potpourri of this diversity. So I hope within a short time that we are going to be the chairman, we would be able to play that role. There is a lot of advantages that you can tabulate by working together rather than working separately. There should be free travel, there should be, of course, there is some, there is political identity, there is nationalism, in this age. But I think, notwithstanding the contradiction, the differences, we must look at the bottom line, what is the benefit?
But is it possible to make something like what the EU implements? For example, like they let people from their country to move into another country freely. Is it something possible?
I think that will take a long time because we have got different population dynamics, I think you have to look at the issue of nation building, nation building in each ASEAN country has to be, we have to look at it, I think, in a fresh way, different way. The dynamics of the world have changed. Geopolitical thing has changed. We must concentrate on not only geo-economics, but we must concentrate on geopolitics. Because geopolitics ultimately are the determinant of relationship, international relations, diplomacy. So it is something that, but to do that, we must be able to put our house in order to be respected. We must put ourselves.
Tan Sri, still within economical perspective of ASEAN, do you think there should be targeted support for less developed members such as Laos, Cambodia and Myanmar. Do you think there should be specific policies or initiatives that should ASEAN implement to uplift these economies, Tan Sri?
I think actually there are plans, like we have at one time Hanoi plan, this plan, that plan, where we work even with our dialogue partners in order to narrow the gap. Say, for example, on the digital gap. That's how Vietnam has benefited. And I think we need, the specific program are there. But it must be, which means, in order for you to have that, we talk about European Union. Don't talk about European Union because we have no intention of copying or replicating the European because of our different dynamics. So, but I think it is important for us to focus on certain matters there where we don't have sensitivity, where there is no sensitivity. At present, we are not able even to tackle human trafficking. Drug problem, you know, we are not even be able to. The 5-point consensus remain, I think, a statement of intention. So all these things. So I think we must take stronger action against each other also. If we want to develop into unity and cohesiveness, you know, if there is something wrong, we take action against in order to correct the direction, but not to punish.
And I think it is best also to ask your opinions regarding what has sparked some discourse amongst Malaysians regarding the very contentious decision of our Prime Minister, Datuk Seri Ibrahim, who appointed former Thai Prime Minister Thaksin Shinawatra as his informal advisor when Kuala Lumpur takes over as ASEAN chair in 2025. What do you think of this decision?
I think the Prime Minister has got discretion. He can do what he wants to do. But I think he must also be sensitive to some very contentious thing.
Yes.
I think he has got his reasons why he thinks that Thaksin will be useful as an informal advisor to him personally, which he has stressed. But I think the ramification is that Thaksin has never happened before. Of course, it will be subject of polemic and debate. No foreign leader before has been made an advisor, whether personal or to the government of another country for the purpose of ASEAN chairmanship. So we need to tap our own resources within the country and all sort of things. So I think now it's an interesting debate. People, and Thaksin has got his own record, and where the issue become more interesting. Even I'm not talking about only Malaysian discussing, even other countries are talking about it. So I think maybe the Prime Minister can explain the reasons, the wisdom of taking such a move. And I think that's good, because we are going to be the chairman. The chairman is seen to be proactive, can make its own, given within the 1 year that we lead, to show our own direction. People do not want to, ini adalah, this is because of the influence of somebody or someone. So I think, to me, he should be more cautious about this one.
Tan Sri, as Malaysia prepares to chair ASEAN in 2025, what should our top priority be to steer the region towards becoming the next big thing, Tan Sri?
I think as we prepare ourselves to chair ASEAN, I think our Malaysia priority should be to strengthen ASEAN's, our priority, geopolitical relevance. This is important because ASEAN is, people crack jokes about our geopolitical relevance, not our importance, our geopolitical relevance. This means that we must make it, now of course we say inclusivity, sustainability, 2 areas that we have mentioned, but it should also include what we have done before, and Malaysia has taken the lead in creating of zone of peace, freedom and neutrality. it should be incorporated into this. You know, in order to do this, we will be able to create greater unity in the global power shifts. There's a lot of power shifts now happening, taking place very fast. So Malaysia we are placed at an opportune moment to do that, to show that we can take the lead. Malaysia will focus on the other thing that we can focus. We have got the advantage is on the digital transformation. So we should be able to become the leader in global digital economy. All this kind of thing. So the opportunity for Malaysia, the chances for Malaysia to show the difference in its leadership is there.
Right. Thank you. And that was Tan Sri Syed Hamid Albar, former Foreign Minister and a seasoned diplomat, sharing us our thoughts on how Malaysia's chairmanship on ASEAN 2025. It's an exciting time for us to step forward and lead the region into the brighter future. To our viewers, thank you for tuning into ASEAN Kita in this episode. Don't miss our next episode where we continue to explore ASEAN's journey and its what lies ahead on its journey.
And I think until then, I'm Farhan Hakimi.
And I'm Ibrahim. Salam hormat. Kita jumpa lagi.
Di dalam setiap berita yang dibawa, konteks amat penting. Cara kita mendapat berita kian berubah. Melalui media sosial maupun saluran digital yang lain serta kaca TV. Kami sentiasa membawakan yang tergempar dan terkini.
Kita buat sesuatu yang berbeza.
Berteraskan acuan verifikasi yang diamalkan supaya setiap fakta adalah sahih. Daripada analisis pelbagai sudut yang mendalam, laporan-laporan khas dan perbincangan yang membina negara. Inklusif, suara rakyat kami ajukan. Keseimbangan persepsi kami pastikan. Kerana setiap cerita mempunyai impak yang tersendiri dan perlu dibawa dengan penelitian yang terperinci. Pastikan Astro AWANI menjadi pilihan anda tidak kira di mana sahaja anda berada. Saluran berita paling dipercayai di Malaysia.
Pelbagai inovasi dipersembahkan.
This is Find Me.
Mencuri perhatian para juri.
Lesung tradisional, tapi saya tak nampak dia tuan naik tadi. So dia buat macam mana?
Penawar luka kronik. Bio Protein Powder.
Integrated Multi-Tropic Aquaculture System.
Dengar bunyi ini. Inovator, Sabtu 9 malam, eksklusif di Astro dan Astro Go.
Baik, SIRIM adalah sebuah organisasi yang telah berdiri ataupun berada di barisan hadapan dalam memacu teknologi, inovasi dan kualiti produk merentasi pelbagai industri. Dengan itu, saya berbesar hati untuk mempersilakan iaitu Presiden dan Ketua Pegawai Eksekutif Kumpulan SIRIM, Datuk Indra Dr. Ahmad Sabirin Arsyad. Saya nak ucapkan terima kasih Datuk kerana sudi meluangkan masa bersama kami. Dan kita lihat hampir 50 tahun penubuhan SIRIM dan tahun depan adalah kita lihat ulang tahunnya. Mungkin boleh kongsikan cerita ataupun sepanjang perjalanan sejak SIRIM ditubuhkan sejak 1975.
Okey, terima kasih. Sebenarnya dalam masa 50 tahun ini satu masa yang panjang bagi mana-mana organisasi, dan saya bagi pihak SIRIM juga sebenarnya kita amat berbangga kita masih lagi relevan dengan industri, dengan komuniti, dengan kerajaan Malaysia pada hari ini. Kalau saya ungkapkan balik dalam masa 50 tahun yang lalu, bila kita ditubuhkan pada tahun 1975, masa itu penubuhannya digabungkan antara dua agensi SIRIM. Sebelum jadi SIRIM, dia ada NISIR dengan SIM, digabungkan untuk menjadi SIRIM. Masa itu dikenali sebagai Standard in the Research Institute of Malaysia, SIRIM, nama panjangnya. Sekarang ini kita kenal sebagai SIRIM saja, bukan lagi nama panjangnya. Dan antara tugasan kita pada dulu sampai sekarang, kita masih mengekalkan fungsi-fungsi yang sama, dan kita antaranya adalah kita pengkomersialan, antaranya kita bagi kita buat satu lagi dari segi pembangunan, R&D, dan satu lagi statutory. Tiga fungsi ini masih lagi relevan dengan SIRIM daripada dulu sampai sekarang, dan tapi aktiviti kita tambah banyak. Dulunya kita bermula dengan adanya MS pertama yang kita bangunkan pada tahun 1975 adalah bagi MS bagi helmet. Itu MS nombor 1 bagi Malaysia. Dan pada hari ini kita telah banyak sangat yang kita lalui antara pengguna standard di Malaysia, dan kita antara lain kita punya fasa pembangunan ini adalah memastikan semua keperluan industri especially memang diberi keselamatan dan terjamin bagi setiap pengguna di Malaysia. Jadi kita lihat banyak testing pengujian yang kita lakukan di SIRIM ini memberikan keutamaan kepada keselamatan, dan kita akan benchmark dia kepada tahap antarabangsa. Jadi kita memang sebahagian daripada kelompok ISO, kumpulan profesional organisasi antarabangsa, dan kita menjadi sebahagian daripada compliance unit di mana kita memenuhi piawaian yang telah ditetapkan. Dan bagi saya daripada kumpulan kecil di SIRIM, hari ini kita telah menjadi sebuah syarikat yang lebih besar dengan 2,000 lebih warga pakar di SIRIM, dan services yang kita tawarkan kepada industri juga telah menjadi kepelbagaian. Dan kadang-kadang bila ditanya mengenai 50 years ni, dalam saya kata SIRIM pada hari ini dalam masa untuk menjangka pada tahun 50 tahun pada tahun depan ialah SIRIM 3.0. Kalau pada 1975 itu adalah SIRIM 1.0, dan bila itu dikoperatkan pada tahun 1996 adalah SIRIM 2.0, dan pada tahun depan insya-Allah kita akan melalui satu fasa yang lebih menarik, mencabar, dan bagi saya secara peribadinya akan ada satu fasa di mana SIRIM akan terus menjuarai, terus menjadi satu leaders of industries. And sesuai dengan kita punya motto Best Partner for Innovation, SIRIM sentiasa ke depan bagi memastikan setiap inovasi, setiap industri yang diperlukan diterajui oleh SIRIM dahulu. And yang mungkin saya boleh katakan sini juga, kita di sini bukannya untuk menyaingi industri, tapi kita untuk complement industri. Dan alhamdulillah sekarang ini, tahun ini saja kita dah lebih kurang 20,000 industri yang kita bantu tahun ini saja, tahun 2024, dan lebih kurang 20,000 lebih trainee yang telah kita latih. Dan saya rasa dalam masa penubuhannya kita telah banyak bantu semua industri yang secara langsung telah membantu kepada pembangunan ataupun kepada kemajuan GDP negara. Dan di situ saya rasa kita boleh berasa bangga dengan apa telah capai oleh SIRIM, and mungkin tak salah bagi saya untuk mengucapkan terima kasih kepada semua yang terlibat dari penubuhan sampai pada hari ini, kerana tanpa jasa dan idea dan kudrat masing-masing tak akan sampai SIRIM pada hari ini. Dan banyaklah yang telah dilalui dan banyak pengorbanan yang telah dilakukan, dan SIRIM masih dikenali ramai, dan kita nak bawa nama SIRIM ni bukan dekat di Malaysia, dan insyaAllah tahun depan dengan adanya 50th of anniversary for SIRIM, kita juga untuk bawa nama SIRIM ini peringkat global, peringkat ASEAN dan sekat global. Dan dia sebagai satu kualiti jaminan mutu dan keberhasilan bagi R&D yang dilakukan untuk manfaat semua orang. Jadi saya rasa SIRIM masih lagi relevan, dan insyaAllah kita akan terus berusaha untuk memajukan SIRIM pada masa depan.
Bercakap mengenai irrelevant, Datuk, itu akan masuk kepada soalan saya yang seterusnya, di mana kalau kita lihat itu adalah sedikit latar belakang dan pencapaian SIRIM sepanjang 50 tahun, dan dalam tempoh 50 tahun kita sudah pun meneliti bagaimanakah perubahan teknologi dengan inovasi, dan mungkin selepas 50 tahun teknologi dan inovasi itu semakin kompleks, dan definisi teknologi inovasi itu juga berbeza kepada pihak industri, pemain industri, perniagaan, dan juga paling penting adalah konsumer, masyarakat kita sendiri. Tapi selepas 50 tahun ni, Datuk dia cakap SIRIM akan kekal relevan, tetapi dalam tempoh teknologi inovasi yang berkembang pesat, semakin kompleks, semakin rumit ini, bagaimana SIRIM mampu kekal relevan untuk jadi sebagai agensi peneraju dalam penyelesaian teknologi dan juga inovasi?
Okey, bagi kita kekal relevan dalam industri, kita punya satu prinsip di sini, kita adalah satu penyelesaian masalah. Kita selalu memikirkan apa yang menjadikan satu isu bagi industri. And we have this thinking, kita katakan, what keeps the political masters awake at night? Apa yang menyebabkan orang-orang kepimpinan negara memikirkan, dan kita sebagai SIRIM akan menjadikan segala usaha untuk bantu menyelesaikan penyelesaian bagi industri dan akan membantu negara maju ke depan. Kalau dulunya kita lebih kepada sebuah agensi yang lebih kepada mechanical centric, kita buat mesin-mesin, kita buat foundry, tapi pada hari ini kita lebih melihat kepada lebih teknologi pendigitalan, digital teknologi, AI dan sebagainya. Dan kita tidak mahu ketinggalan, dan kita nak jadikan satu SIRIM sebagai rujukan bagi industri. Dan kita dengan kemampuan yang sedia ada, kita pasti akan terus menyokong industri, dan apa yang menariknya, apa yang kita bangunkan ini semuanya selaras dengan dasar New Industry Master Plan 2030. Jadi panduan kita memastikan bahawa apa yang telah polisi yang telah dilancarkan oleh kerajaan akan disokong oleh SIRIM bagi memastikan industri mencapai tahap kemajuan lebih tinggi, dan kita ingin melihat Malaysia menjadi sebuah negara maju by 2030, dan kita ingin melihat rakyat teknologi akan di-embrace oleh semua orang. Dan kita rasakan tanpa teknologi is the game changer for any countries. And we do not want to become satu negara yang masih lagi berpegang kepada low teknologi dan kemampuan tenaga buruh, tapi kita nak satu yang dikatakan oleh menteri kita juga, kita kata oleh Yang Berhormat Mulia Tengku Zafrul, go big or go home. So kita nak satu industri yang lebih maju, yang lebih mempunyai daya yang baik kepada sumbangan yang baik pada ekonomi negara, insya-Allah.
Jadi Datuk, apakah antara fokus utama pada tahun depan 2025 terutamanya untuk SIRIM dalam konteks go big or go home with teknologi dan juga embracing teknologi?
Sebenarnya bagi tahun depan kita banyak program-program yang kita akan lancarkan, dan satunya yang akan dilancarkan oleh Yang Mulia Tengku Zafrul, Menteri MITI pada tahun depan adalah satu program yang akan menjadi satu, kita panggilkan satu mungkin benchmark untuk industri berkembang dengan lebih besar. Satu program yang dikenali sebagai Smart Factory Transformation Program. Dalam program ini kita akan membantu lebih kurang 3,000 syarikat yang telah dinyatakan dalam NIMP 2030 supaya menjadi sebuah syarikat yang menggunakan otomasi dalam semua operasi syarikat tersebut. Dan kenapa kita pentingkan kepada automation ataupun in terms of smart factory transformation, kita nak pastikan level productivity ditingkatkan, jumlah pekerja dapat dikurangkan yang tidak mahir, dan kita ingin memastikan pengeluaran atau output yang lebih efisien. Dan kita akan juga membuat pengukuran di mana setiap satu syarikat tersebut akan diukur dari segi hasil keluaran dia dan GDP yang akan dikeluarkan. Jadi proses-proses ini akan dibantu oleh SIRIM dari segi penilaian, readiness assessment, dari segi pensijilan ataupun dari segi testing yang diperlukan, bagi memastikan semua elemen-elemen penting bagi smart factory ini akan ada dalam semua factory yang dipilih. Kita punya lebih pada 100,000 syarikat di Malaysia, factory untuk dalam bidang manufacturing. Kalau kita ambil the first 3,000 companies to be realised, and this is the make or break for Malaysia. And if we can have this game changer enablers untuk automation untuk industries, we can see the entire impacts of the ecosystem will change, di mana produktiviti akan lebih baik, di mana hasil kerja yang lebih bermutu, di segi keuntungan yang lebih besar pada syarikat. And we are pushing hard for syarikat untuk membuat lebih keuntungan, sebabkan dengan kadar tersebutlah dia akan bayar lebih cukai kepada kerajaan. Jadi pulangannya adalah SIRIM indirectly akan bantu kerajaan mengumpul dana melalui cukai daripada syarikat yang berdaya maju. Dan kita nak memastikan industri Malaysia terus kekal maju dan dapat mengeksport ke luar negara. Dan SIRIM akan memastikan produk-produk yang dieksport itu tersebut adalah produk yang sampai kepada tahap yang diterima oleh antarabangsa, dan paling kurang dia mencapai tahap yang dikehendaki dan ataupun melebihi tahap yang dikehendaki. So that is one of the bigger program Selain itu kita akan pastikan juga satu lagi kita nak pastikan antara program yang kita sedang lakukan yang mungkin kurang dibicarakan adalah penambahan apa yang kita panggil sebagai calibration and measurement capabilities (CMCs) bagi untuk industri meteorologi. Meteorologi kadang-kadang orang selalu keliru meteorologi atau meteorologi. Meteorologi lebih kepada hujan dan air banjir segala-galanya, tapi ini meteorologi lebih kepada pengukuran. Pengukuran ini penting bagi memastikan setiap apa yang diukur adalah mempunyai satu traceability kepada peringkat antarabangsa. Dan kita nak pastikan bahawa pengguna tidak ditipu oleh penjual. Kiranya contohnya kalau kita belikan 1 liter petrol, kita dapat 1 liter petrol. Kalau kita belikan 1 kilogram gula, 1 kilogram gula. Jadi meteorologi pengukuran ini akan memastikan dari segi trade barrier kita ada dari segi calibration yang lebih sempurna bagi industri yang berada di Malaysia ni yakin dengan setiap apa equipment yang ada di Malaysia ni. Kita bukan sebuah negara yang kalau dalam contoh kita sebuah negara yang tidak mengikut standard, tapi kita ada semua SOP dan kita bukan cacah marba lah. Kita ada platform masing-masing yang kita ikut bagi memastikan kita mengikuti satu trade conformity yang semua orang boleh faham, yang semua boleh understand, yang semua orang yakin dengan apa yang ditawarkan oleh Malaysia. Jadi itu saya rasa yang agak kurang diperbualkan pada konteks pada hari ini.
Banyak program yang telah dilaksanakan oleh SIRIM dan akan dilaksanakan pada masa hadapan dan pada masa akan datang juga. Dan mungkin boleh kongsikan Datuk sedikitlah dalam kita bekerjasama dalam memacu pembangunan perindustrian, pembangunan teknologi, inovasi ni. Apakah antara cabaran yang boleh kita teliti? Adakah daripada segi policy untuk kita memacu seluruh ekosistem ni ataupun daripada segi kerjasama merentas agensi negeri ataupun bagaimana, Datuk?
Saya rasa cabaran paling utama bagi kita, saya kata dari segi polisi yang telah dibentuk oleh kerajaan, Kerajaan Madani pada hari ini saya rasa amat baik dan dia telah menyeluruh, komprehensif bagi membantu industri sampai ke tahap yang lebih tinggi. Policy wise saya rasa kita telah cukup, tapi mungkin yang agak kuranglah kesanggupan industri untuk menerima changes. Industri masih lagi biasa dengan buat cara kerja lama, masih lagi menggunakan hard labour dalam pekerjaan mereka dan memerlukan sedikit kos yang initial capex yang perlu dilaburkan. Itu kadang menjadi kekangan bagi industri dia, dan industri kebanyakan memohon kepada dana daripada kerajaan. Dan kita lihat industri sepatutnya lebih bersikap terbuka dan they should be more willing to invest rather than menunggu kepada bantuan kerajaan saja. Dan sebuah industri yang mempunyai kebertanggungjawaban industri korporat bisa sanggup untuk menukar dan bantu kerajaan tanpa mengharapkan bantuan kerajaan semata-mata. Pasal kita katakan industri dalam konteks ini kita katakan sekiranya dia sanggup untuk meletakkan dana, kerajaan akan meletakkan segala-galanya yang polisi dia ada, semua dah ada. Dan SIRIM sentiasa sanggup untuk membantu dalam kos yang sedikit bagi industri untuk mengadaptasikan apa yang nak dilakukan. So cabaran kita untuk industri saya kata lebih kepada embrace industri punya ability to acquire technologies, and dari segi ekosistem antara global, antara state, antara global, itu saya rasa kita dah atasi. Kita dah ada rangkaian yang cukup lengkap bagi kita ekspor produk sampai ke luar negara. Tapi adakah industri kita sanggup? Tidak. Itu yang perlu kita tukar, satu mindset change yang perlu kita ada. Dan saya rasa kerajaan telah banyak bagi insentif, banyak galakan, MITI especially telah banyak memberikan banyak program yang bagi bantu industri tersebut. Dan SIRIM akan sentiasa memastikan setiap yang ingin dilakukan oleh kerajaan akan dapat dilakukan. Dan kita that's why in our engagement oleh SIRIM, we never stop talking to the industries. And saya selalu katakan SIRIM dengan industri ini berpisah tiada lah. Kalau macam polis dia ada dengan komuniti kan. Jadi kita dengan industri kita selagi ada industri, selagi itulah ada SIRIM. Jadi we want industries to be able to take some risk, trust us to guide them to the next level. Itu yang kita akan lakukan.
Dan Datuk, kita lihat banyak usaha oleh SIRIM yang telah dilakukan, telah dikongsikan oleh Datuk untuk memacu pemain industri ini ke tahap yang lebih tinggi, ke tahap yang lebih, kita boleh cakap, lebih kukuh. Datuk seringkali bercakap mengenai antara program-program macam Smart Tech Up ini, smart untuk memacu pihak pemain industri dan keseluruhan ekosistem, dan ada juga bercakap daripada segi program mengukur itu sendiri. Dan kita lihat SIRIM ini juga melihat mematuhi piawaan antarabangsa, global. Mungkin boleh kongsikan apakah antara perkara yang boleh dipelajari dalam konteks Malaysia sendiri, contohnya organisasi seperti SIRIM boleh adapt daripada pendekatan inovasi daripada luar negara, negara-negara jiran peringkat global yang mungkin advanced countries lah, kerana mereka mungkin ada lebih banyak resources, lebih banyak cost. Apa yang Malaysia boleh pelajari dari mereka dan adapt dalam konteks lokal?
Okay, sebenarnya bagi penanda aras benchmarking, kita telah lakukan kerjasama dengan satu organisasi di Jerman yang dipanggil sebagai Fraunhofer. Fraunhofer adalah sebuah organisasi macam SIRIM juga, tapi dia telah membantu semua negara-negara yang sedang membangun bagi mengguna pakai satu penanda aras benchmarking macam ISO, supaya semua proses-proses yang dilakukan mengikut proses yang telah ditentukan oleh antarabangsa. Dan bila saya ke Jerman baru-baru ini, saya melihat di negara Jerman tidak, syarikat dia tak kata pun dia mengikut ISO sekian-sekian. Padahal di Malaysia kita lihat dalam banyak organisasi kita kata syarikat dia mendapat ISO 9001, mendapat ISO sekian number ya. Tapi dan bila saya bertanya kepada orang Jerman, dia kata kami tak gunakan lagi ISO tersebut walaupun dia sudah menjadi satu culture kami. Dia memang ada, tapi dia tak payah sebut dah. Pasti dia menjadi satu budaya orang Jerman, orang yang mungkin negara maju yang telah pakaikan penanda aras yang memang mempunyai satu proses yang telah tersusun. Kita masih lagi kena bantu, kena katakan kita ada ISO ni supaya kita mengikut ISO yang tertentu. Sekarang tidak ada langsung kita tak ikut. Untuk mengingatkan kita perlu ikut ISO yang tertentu. Jadi kenapa pentingnya ISO ni? Bagi kita nak menjadi sebuah negara maju contohnya, ISO ni penting bagi kita memastikan setiap proses yang dilakukan mengikut ISO yang telah ditetapkan. Jadi sekiranya ada perubahan dari segi pengurusan, pekerja dan sebagainya, proses tersebut berjalan dengan lancar. Tidak bertukar chef, bertukarlah rasa masakan tersebut. Ini bertukar chef pun masa makan yang sama, contohnya. Jadi untuk jadi negara maju, proses yang lebih baik, kualiti yang lebih tinggi dapat dihasilkan. Jadi ISO ni begitu penting dalam semua industri, dan kita melihat dalam semua industri yang telah kita nyatakan, impak bagi organisasi yang mempunyai ISO ni adalah pengurangan pembaziran, peningkatan pada produktiviti. Dan baru-baru ni kita melihat kita punya dari segi competitive index kita menurun sedikit, dan pihak kerajaan minta semua agensi-agensi bantu untuk meningkatkan tahap competitiveness bagi Malaysia, dan kita bantu agensi macam MPC, dan kita gunakan ISO ni satu sebagai penanda aras bagi memastikan semua mengikut satu tahap penanda aras, dan macam mana dan kita benchmark dengan negara-negara maju sebab kita nak jadi macam negara maju tersebut. And bila di sana pun kita lihat in terms of tenaga pakar, kita punya tenaga pakar yang sama dengan Jerman contohnya. Dan that's why kita berkolaborasi dengan Fraunhofer Institute. Dan kita ada di sini, kita ada program kita panggil SIRIM Fraunhofer Program, di mana kita mengadaptasikan program-program Fraunhofer dengan industri yang kita lakukan. Dan saya rasa dalam tahun 2016 sampai hari ini, kita telah bantu lebih kurang 2,500 syarikat dengan telah diadaptasi dengan teknologi terkini bagi memastikan setiap yang dilakukan mempunyai kebolehpercayaan, mempunyai keyakinan dan produk yang lebih tinggi. Kadang-kadang dia punya isu sini mungkin 10% syarikat yang masuk program kita ini gagal sebab the main challenges for these companies are to continue doing what is right tanpa panduan, tanpa bimbingan. Kadang-kadang dia nak hand holding tak boleh selama-lamanya. Kita hand holding ni, you must be able to do this on your own. Dia kadang-kadang bila kita dah habis program itu, dia balik pada cara lama. Dan dia gagal. Dan kita nak dia lebih maju dan dia lebih inovasikan benda yang baru. Dan saya rasa cabaran kita yang utama adalah syarikat tersebut dan mungkin keyakinan kita sebagai rakyat Malaysia mesti ditanam sebab kita juga mampu untuk berjaya dengan lebih baik.
Baik, Datuk Indra, mungkin soalan terakhir saya, kita meliti, Datuk pun sudah berkongsi bagaimanakah perjalanan penubuhan SIRIM sejak 50 tahun yang lalu, dan kita akan masuk tahun baru dengan azam baru, aspirasi baru. Mungkin boleh kongsikan harapan Datuk, wishlist Datuk dan SIRIM juga untuk masa depan SIRIM 50 tahun akan datang.
Dalam masa 20 tahun ini, aspirasi kita menjadikan SIRIM kekal relevan, nombor satu, menjadikan SIRIM sebuah organisasi yang lebih berjaya. Dan kita punya satu tagline di sini untuk mendapatkan satu income SIRIM, walaupun dia bukan sebuah agensi yang besar macam lain, dia punya revenue 1 bilion ringgit. And itu satu aspirasi yang besar bagi SIRIM, bagi memastikan semua anggota kerja mempunyai satu kemahiran yang terbaik di Malaysia. Dan harapan kita juga untuk menjadikan SIRIM ni mempunyai segala kelengkapan teknologi terkini dan menjadi rujukan bagi semua industri di Malaysia dalam semua pelbagai sektor industri. Dan kita bukan nak menjadi sebuah agensi yang mengikut, tapi kita jadi satu leader, kita ni peneraju industri, and we want to become the center of excellence. Dan kita, macam saya katakan, saya melihat kampus di SIRIM di Shah Alam ni contohnya kampus terbuka. Bila kita masuk dalam kampus di Shah Alam ni, kita akan masuk satu kampus yang berbeza daripada tempat lain, dengan automationnya, dengan robotiknya, dengan penggunaan teknologi terkini. So you come into the center of Shah Alam ni, you feel you are in a different technological space. Itu yang kita nampak. Pasal kita at the end of the day, kita masih lagi mempunyai satu slogan yang selalu kita katakan, people can see that one, dekat billboard yang ada SIRIM baru beli. Dan kita nak pastikan slogan tersebut diguna pakai untuk tempoh yang lama. Mungkin dari segi aktiviti berbeza, tapi kita nak SIRIM ada touch point pada semua rakyat Malaysia, di Malaysia dan juga globally. Dan kita nak berikan satu SIRIM teknologi diplomasi juga untuk kerajaan gunakan SIRIM untuk membantu negara-negara ASEAN yang lain yang kurang mampu ataupun yang least developed nation, supaya dia dapat sama-sama bangunkan negara tersebut macam Malaysia. Dan insya-Allah saya rasa SIRIM akan sentiasa bersama dengan kerajaan Malaysia untuk menyokong industri. Dan pada 50 years akan datang ni, selalu kita katakan SIRIM atau Malaysia pada masa depan, technological change will be different. Masa itu mungkin orang dah terbang ke angkasa lepas, berpindah antara planet ke planet, dan SIRIM will be part of the ecosystem untuk menerajui teknologi pada masa depan. Dan ingat satu yang saya katakan tadi, ada SIRIM baru beli.
Ada SIRIM baru beli, itu adalah kata-kata semangat dan nasihat ataupun kita cakap wish list daripada Datuk dan juga SIRIM untuk tahun hadapan dan pada masa akan datang. Saya nak ucapkan terima kasih sekali lagi, dan untuk anda dapatkan perbincangan dan perkongsian eksklusif bersama Presiden dan Ketua Pegawai Eksekutif Kumpulan SIRIM, Datuk Indra Dr. Ahmad Sabirin Arsyad. Jangan lupa akan kami rangkumkan dalam astrowani.com dan di semua platform digital Astro Awani.
Malaysia sebenarnya berada di kedudukan kedua terburuk di dunia berkaitan keseimbangan hidup dan kerja.
LRT3 sudah akan mula beroperasi suku ketiga 2025. Kerja-kerja fizikal dan penstrukturan sudah mencecah 95%.
KPM sebenarnya sedang memperincikan cadangan untuk menyediakan allowance kos sara hidup tingkatan 6.
Melibat urus antara umat Islam dan agama lain penting supaya dapat mengelakkan ataupun membawa kepada Islamofobia.
Cukup sekadar curi 1 sen dari setiap akaun bank. Season 2. Keadilan cuma wujud bila jenayah berleluasa.
You have given power to the wrong people.
Iblis dulu pun asalnya malaikat.
Tapi bila undang-undang mampu dijual beli, apa pilihan yang kita ada?
Welcome to Digital Karma.
Apabila acara badminton tiba di Malaysia, ia adalah acara yang hebat. Pemain yang hebat.
There's the power, there's the big shot.
Aksi yang hebat.
Oh, what a shot that is.
Detik-detik yang hebat.
Look at that poetry in motion.
Kesemua ini terlalu hebat untuk dilepaskan. Kejohanan Petronas terbuka Malaysia 2025 secara langsung di Astro Badminton dan Astro Go.
Thanks for joining us. This is The Economy. I'm your host, Ibrahim Sani. I am currently at the humble abode of my long-time friend, Sharat Kutan. How are you, Sharat?
I'm very good, thank you.
Clearly, you're a very learned person. These books are very nice ornaments to your household. Any other furniture that you want to go through?
No, other paintings, but apart from that, I don't think there's anything to recommend.
Let's come down to the brass tacks. How real are you in reading these books, or are they just really furniture?
Well, actually, I read, but I do read slowly. It really is a question of...
a page a year?
You know, I've managed a couple of books. We can talk about the books I've read.
In your lifetime, so about 5 of them.
But no, actually, in preparation for the show, actually not. But I have been reading about American politics, so it's something I like.
Okay, fine. So you have prompted me to ask you about Trump inauguration, impact on Malaysia, and other boring stuff that we need to talk about during Christmas period. But generally speaking, 2016, we were together at BFM. We had an office pool where we did the haram thing, which is betting. I don't know whether you remember this. Yeah, of course, you're slightly aged. I'm not sure if memory serves you well now. But
yeah, with the cobwebs.
Tak apa, kita dah vote dah sekarang, dua-dua.
Okay.
But generally speaking, only you and me voted that Trump would win. The entire office thought at that point in time Hillary Clinton would win and win easy, because nobody would have thought that a clown such as Trump could win. Turned out he won. My question to you now is, did you expect him to win this time round? Because I certainly fully fledged did. And the difference between 2024 election versus 2016 election, a lot more people actually kind of believe that Trump would win. Whether or not they want Trump to win or not is another matter, but the inability to grasp reality of how real politics works today is as such where people actually thought Trump could win. Were you one of those folks?
Well, it's very hard for me to say because I didn't have a sense of the ground, and I think that's very important. I just read, you know, American websites, but I think that one thing I got, and I'm typically quite suspicious of, is this politics of contempt and mockery, right? So one of the things that I think a lot of liberals and people who supported Kamala Harris and such do is to kind of dismiss Trump because, as you say, of his personality, these kind of absurd statements that he makes sometimes. But I was trying to understand where this is coming from, the kind of Trump phenomena for some time now. And I've been reading around the topic. So I wasn't sure because there was also a lot of analysis of how the polls can get it wrong, and they often do get it wrong. And part of it is they don't know how to poll Trump supporters. They don't really understand. And sometimes I think they're blinded by their own prejudices, right? So in refusing whatever they think of him as a fascist or whatever, they blind themselves from seeing what's actually happening on the ground.
And this is, of course, can be extrapolated to all the other markets, countries around the world. We've seen how strong family names can keep being voted back into office in Southeast Asia, for instance. We've seen the Arroyos, the Macapagals. We've seen how the Shinawat is now back in office. We've seen how Jokowi, for instance, is slowly building his dynasty. If I'm not mistaken, last week they were voted out of his own party, but that's, in my opinion, a rather temporary measure, or they can just hop to another party and so on. This whole politics of contempt and politics of disillusionment, is it new? I don't think so, though.
So, I mean, for me, okay, so there's several things I think you kind of point to. One is the politics of mocking your opponent, dismissing your opponent as being something less worthy of, you know, kind of serious consideration. I think that's what was happening from the liberal side, looking at conservatives, looking at Trump and the Trump phenomena. That's one thing. The disillusionment, I think, is something that's very real. From what I read of American politics, that there is a disillusionment among many supporters, and I think the way in which Biden and Kamala Harris played the Palestine-Gaza issue, I think bred a lot of disappointment and disillusionment among young people in America. But again, you know, I see America from a distance, like you do. I mean, you probably spend more time there. I've visited twice, so I don't know very much. I try to read, and I try to read people whose analysis is quite grounded in what's happening. So one of the, I think the best books I've read on the topic is Deer Hunting with Jesus, which is a book that looks at why the working class in America seems to vote for people like Trump. I'm a billionaire who's now putting together a cabinet full of billionaires. So why would the working class do that? And you know, and such. And also I read a book about Steve Bannon and the linkages between him and other ideologues of his sort, Alexander Dugin in Russia and all that. So speaking about the books, I do read the books I buy. It takes me a bit of time, but I do read the books partly because I want an insider view of what is happening, you know, and something I can't have myself because I'm not there. Yeah. But yeah.
But another element is, of course, reading is one thing. It's the discourse that follows afterwards that is more important. That would perhaps deepen your understanding of the kind of writings that you read. Based on this, and of course, I think you're selling yourself short here. You too have a lot of counterparties, and you do meet a lot more people, perhaps more than I do. The reading then, therefore, on the ground, how do you feel the sentiment is like? Is the disillusionment now crossing over to the blue states? Folks in California and New York, they are two completely different animals compared to the rest of the Midwest America and so on.
I have no idea. I mean, this is really not... So, I mean, you've invited some of the shows completely unqualified to talk about American politics. Yeah, I have no idea what I'm doing here.
Yeah.
Except this is my apartment.
Yeah.
Okay, but,
but I have no idea what I'm doing here.
I have a reason to be in this house.
No, but
I'll point you to a book I started. I wanted to read partly because in anticipation of the inauguration, the second Trump administration, was a book by Michael Lewis called The Fifth Risk, and this is about the transition, right? So he writes about this officer's transition that every presidential candidate of a certain stature has to put in place even before they have gone to the polls. The officers, what they had to do is they had to put a transition team together. They have to meet people in government and understand what is going on so that when they take over, they can manage it better, right? So what Michael Lewis does is very grounded report on this whole process. You know, speaking about the Obama administration, how it came in and also didn't do very well in terms of the transition, but when they left, they put in these amazing processes. The problem was that when Trump came on, he just largely ignored this, and he ignored it for a number of reasons, partly the money, because he had to spend his own money for the transition. And so what Michael Lewis points to is what is now, I think, big in the news and something we all should be watching. If you're interested in American politics and interested in where this is going, is the dismantling of the administrative state. So that's a book I read, you know, in order to understand, I mean, things that most of us find difficult. I think a lot of Malaysians wouldn't know how to describe our government. It's the entire network of agencies and who gets selected and all that. But one of the things that I think Trump does is that he has demonized the administrative state. The question is that just a broad ideological brush, or is he talking about specific, you know, the lack of accountability, one of the criticisms, the cost of the American administrative state, all that is there. And then this book is quite enlightening in the sense of talking about how complex American government is. And so when Trump takes over, and of course, you know, Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy, is it Ramaswamy, yes. Right? I mean, they are tasked with dismantling the administrative state. So that's a story. When it comes to the second Trump term, I'm very interested in that, because I'm interested to see how and what he does.
Okay, are you also looking at perhaps some of the early appointments made, you know, maybe scrutinizing, other than Vivek and Elon? I think those are the two big headlines. But do you feel that the overtures that is currently being done by Trump prior to his inauguration is piquing your interest a lot more?
Well, only because that's the headline. So there's, you know, if you go to politico.com, they have a kind of, what do they call it? A dashboard for the picks.
Yeah.
And I think one of the early ideas, or one of the early stories was Trump was putting these people that weren't necessarily some candidates that the Republicans would approve of, and trying to push them through because he wanted to demonstrate his power against the Republicans. But he's had a lot of pushback, and he's had candidates fall out, right? Because of scandals or inappropriateness, and there are Republicans who are not playing ball with him, at least in Congress. So I thought that was kind of interesting. I don't know. Again, I don't know enough about like a Tulsi Gabbard, is it her name is, and all these people.
Tulsi Gabbard.
Yeah. So
former Democrat, by the way.
Yeah, former Democrat, and you know, part Asian, whatever.
Yeah.
But I mean, for me, you know, I think it's a story of governance. I think the one thing that we all should put aside when looking at the Trump administration, the coming Trump administration, is not to demonize it, not to come to the story of Trump with fear or loathing. I think that clouds our own judgment. So, I mean, to really step back and think of Trump as a phenomena, think of Trump as a symptom of what is changing in America today in terms of its economy, in terms of its politics, and trying to take a measure from there, rather than, you know, decide from the get-go that you hate Trump or he's disagreeable, or on the other side, you love Trump because he's going to deliver all these wonderful things. And I know a lot of Malaysians are, you know, kind of in their hearts Trump supporters. You know?
Yes, I have met a few.
Yeah. There are a lot of Trump supporters in Malaysia, and they dislike the liberal, loathing of Trump. But they themselves are perhaps equally delusional. I mean, I think, you know, on all sides.
No, I was about to say that. I mean, on the point of delusional, I think I can argue any side of the political spectrum can be accused of being part of that. In fact, the shared delusion amongst ardent supporters of any political spectrum is going to be evident when you start trying to be a little bit more constructive and a little bit more criticizing of one's political alliance and one's political policy. My issue here is, how does this translate to us here across the world? I mean, 2016 Trump can be argued is going to be a little bit different from 2024 Trump. And from what I read as an outsider as well, this is going to be a slightly different Trump than we knew of from the first time he became.
Better prepared.
Better prepared, better accustomed to the situation. He probably understands the real politics behind it. He probably understands the great machinery that is running the government and the kind of reactions of world leaders. There is this whole idea of Trump not knowing or not aware of his surroundings, but I doubt that that is the true case.
Yeah, so he just had his first press conference at, what is it, Mar-a-Lago,
yes. Florida.
Yeah, that's right. So he's had his first press conference. All things came up. The inauguration came up, and he said about, he's spoken to 100 leaders and 100 world leaders are coming. But interestingly, he mentioned Xi Jinping, and he said, I hope he comes. We've invited him. He says, Xi Jinping is a great friend. I've talked to him for hours. And so the idea that with Trump, what we'll get is this, that U.S.-China relations are going to sour even more. Might not, I mean, we don't know, right? But this was his initial gambit, is to say that Xi Jinping is a friend. So, I mean, I think for us in this part of the world where superpower rivalries are going to be something to watch, any hot encounters in the South China Sea are going to be problematic. All those kinds of things, right? As these two superpowers kind of jostle for influence, or at least the American, kind of architecture of security architecture that's been built here is now challenged by China. I think we're all concerned about that. We're concerned about a trade war and such. But I mean, his initial gambit, at least in the press conference, seemed a little less of that sort. So I don't know where he's going. We do know that his pick for, I think I don't know if it's ambassador to China or trade fella, is somebody who is a hawk.
Yeah.
But, you know, the thing is, I think people have to be realistic. All countries try to promote their national interests, and Trump is no different, right? Trump speaks the language of economic nationalism, of protecting American jobs, which is why whatever accusations of racism you might level at him, when you look at the numbers that voted were among black males,
actually it cuts across the demography.
Yeah, he does very well.
Completely different from 2016.
Why? Because they see in him a strong leader, somebody who's going to stand up for America. Yet you might not like the whole "Make America Great Again" stuff, and you might think, "Oh, this is dangerous for what somebody like Michael Mandelbaum calls, a hyperpower." But I think that's in decline. You see somebody who is, standing up for America. And why not, right? I mean, if you're American, if you're a Malaysian, you want, your prime minister to stand up for you.
Yeah.
If you're American, you want your president to stand up for you, right? And for your country and its interests. So I think there's a lot that's interesting in the way Trump is going to manage international relations. He kind of rather oddly enough, took on the mantle of the peace candidate during the elections, right?
Yeah.
So, but if you compare him to Biden, who declared himself a Zionist and was and has funded the genocide in Gaza, and Kamala's own kind of weird,
positioning.
and then the Democratic Party being completely slavish to the Zionist lobby.
Yeah.
So why not? Why not Trump, right? But I think what you see in Trump is somebody who says things that people think, okay, he's got short sentences, but he says things like, strength. I mean, you negotiate from a position of power. He just says things that things are huge, things are awesome. They'll get done in a day. I mean, his messaging is kind of clear, right? And Americans, maybe they don't like long sentences, too many subclauses, and maybe the kind of what they think is the slipperiness that comes from a liberal establishment. I mean, I am nauseated by American liberals and the liberal establishment across the world myself. I mean, following the genocide, which is to say they're very slippery. They're just people who won't speak straight, right? Who want to. So I mean, whatever it is, I think we kind of look at Trump with much less bigotry, without those blinders, and maybe we'll get a better sense of who he is and what he'll do.
That retreatist element of American globalization, do you feel that is more evident now, or it's just mostly posturing?
Okay, so this is another book I've been reading, and this is about...
Banyaklah book you read. So
I do, I just trying to prove you see, as you said, I read the book.
It's not props.
I do read.
Fine.
I do read. So this book is called The Rise and Fall of the Neoliberal Order, and it basically traces different periods, periods of consensus, right? The consensus coming out of America after the stock market crash of 1929, right? And that sort of New Deal thing, the idea that you had to respect labor and you had to have welfare and capitalism couldn't be unencumbered, right? It had to be regulated and all that. Now that was a consensus that survived until the 70s and started to break down, partly because, as this author argues, what was holding it together was the Cold War and the Soviet Union and communism as an alternative to capitalism. So once that started to fall apart, then you have a kind of rapacious capitalism that we see in neoliberalism, that the Democrats, that Reagan started, and what's his name, Bill Clinton perfected, right? It's one that does not respect organized labor, that has said, well, we don't care if you don't have jobs or your jobs, move to other countries, right? And so labor in America has been under deep pressure. Now in that period where that consensus is also kind of faltering and breaking, Well, what Trump, and this is where because I haven't finished the book, this is where I'm not so sure what Trump is in terms of that, right? In terms of this transition period. Because he's a man, because he wants to dismantle the administrative state, is against regulation. He thinks that American society and economy is overly regulated. He wants to deregulate it. He thinks we'll free things up, create more jobs. That's the ideological position. Whether it does or not, I don't know. So who he is in terms of these broader movements, I think is what we should look at. So instead of getting caught up in the headlines that, pick up on, Trump's kind of nonsensical statements about women or migrants.
Yeah.
No,
strip that away.
Yeah, that noise. Just, stop listening to the noise. Stop reading headlines, designed to trigger you.
Yeah.
And you maybe start to see what Trump is actually trying to do.
Despite my demeanor, I do take stock every year in terms of how I have carried myself throughout the year, being reflective of what has transpired, how I can make things better, the things that I have missed out on, the things that I have not spotted, for instance. Do you do these kind of reflections?
Yeah, I wish I did them more systematically. I wish I did them with
But
more
that's who
depth.
you are. You're rather...
Yeah, kind of scattered.
Yeah.
Okay, but I do think that it's important, and I think if we come back to the question of Trump, I think I also want to get away from precisely the things I criticize other people for, to be easily triggered, to read. To mistake the headlines for the reality, to see surface phenomena.
So
rather
you
than
apply that level
dynamics.
of skepticism, but in good faith, basically. So you're trying
Well,
to...
I think we have to keep an open mind, right? So I have my position, in the sense that I have my own political values, but I do think that those values need to be challenged. And then we live in a time where it's deeply challenged by global events. I don't know if anybody still believes in God. I don't, and I don't think anything of the last couple of years or the last 15 months suggests that there is a God out there. But anyway, the more important thing is for me, when I think about human politics or the politics of human society, is to think, what is it that is driving people? Right? What are the passions? What are their fears? And I think today there are a lot of fears. I think, we all have fears. I have fears myself. And so I'm trying to kind of manage that. So if you want on a personal note, that is maybe some of the reflection I'm trying to do, develop new habits, cast off old habits, that kind of thing. But yeah, of course.
But domestically, are you happy? So I'm going to do a pollster here. But are you happy of where the country's headed? Do you feel that, especially because the show is titled The Economy, quite frankly, do you feel that the country is heading in the right direction in terms of the economy? Or do you feel that it is in the wrong direction? If you are given that choice, I know you hate these kind of things, binary, are we heading in the right direction, wrong direction?
Well, I think one thing, before I answer that question,
everything is nuanced with you.
Okay, no, there's stability. So we have a modicum of political stability in the country that we lacked over the last 4 years. We see politicians maybe not as evolved as they should be. The same old scripts trotted out by all and sundry. We know who that rogues gallery is on that score. But I think more importantly is that the government is attempting to chart a plan, though I think we sometimes forget that it's not just government. Malaysia is too open an economy to be thinking just about national policies, right? It as a way of trying to negotiate, but the sea is not in our control.
Yeah.
And so global events are going to be really important to look out for, and then Trump and potential trade war between China. Though people have been saying that, in fact, some of the paradoxical consequences of the trade war might be of benefit to Malaysia, right? So paradoxically, Malaysia might benefit from a trade war. So okay, so I think there's all that. I think I'm not unhappy. I would like to see a greater commitment to certain of the reform agenda that the government had, at least the Pakatan Harapan component of government had. And I would like to see the older parties like UMNO reconstitute themselves. We see in the UMNO youth chief a very young man reading a very old script, a bit sad. Maybe, renewal takes longer than we expect. But I do think there are interesting developments in Malaysia. I look at Sarawak. I'm very interested in what Sarawak is doing. I mean, for me, that's has been the biggest story this year, and I think will be the biggest story next year, because of Sarawak's ambition. I don't know how they're going to realize all their plans, but they're ambitious. They have a positive story.
It all boils down to Abang Jo. If you
Yes,
ask me.
and I think the Sarawak population, I mean, they want something more. The Federation is under pressure, maybe in a good way, if Anwar and his team can reimagine the Federation in a way that will make Sabahan Sarawakians happier. I think that would be good. Ignoring their grievances is a bad idea. And I think that we're on our way to maybe a healthier federation if everybody is thoughtful about it. So, yeah, I don't think we're really in a bad place, not at all.
So, where do people find you these days? I mean, of course,
BFM.
Yeah, so let's.
I'm
talk
on the
about
evening.
that.
I'm on the evening show,
which is a different flavor to where you were in the first stint. So you did a Trump as well, I suppose. Yeah, you went in and then you left and then you went in again. But this time around, a different creature.
Yeah. So it's an evening show. It's.
Hang on, before you go into that, we were working together, Sharad and I, 2014, 2015. That was in the morning run. That was a lot of fun, if you ask me, along with our good friend Melissa Idris. And it was very business, very with sprinkles of politics.
I used to listen to watch Bloomberg every day.
Oh yeah, there you go. So so you're in the evening edition. People are driving home. Of course, this is if you are onto linear these days. I presume everybody's on demand on podcast anyway. So yes, how has the evening edition been treating you?
Well, they treat me very well. I mean, BFM treats me very well, as Awani did. But I think more importantly is that, because we do these days when we have talkback, meaning and in fact, every day is a kind of talkback day. We invite calls and messages and voice notes. You get a sense of where at least some segment of Malaysian society is going in terms of where their outlook, their philosophical outlook, their political outlook. It's sometimes shocking, sometimes despairing, sometimes heartwarming, and you feel that
basically the tapestry of society.
Yeah, but people can be quite. I've heard the whole range, right? People deeply compassionate to absolutely inhumane in their thinking about groups, others, migrants, marginalized groups.
Yeah.
So so I think what I do appreciate in listening to all these voices is I get a sense of how complex people are out there, that we think it's just a message. It's often more than just a message. It's the reception of it, the frameworks. And this is why, coming back to Trump, people hear Trump might say one thing and two groups will have very different interpretations of what he said. But because in America it's gotten so polarized. The question is whether in Malaysia we have also in a similar situation, that we have our silos, right? And so
do you think that's the case?
Yes, I think so.
I mean, you're suspicious of the case right now, but
I think so. I think that we have fewer people building bridges. Too many of our politicians benefit from divisiveness. I mean, Dr. Mahathir, I think, is quite divisive. Akmal, what's his name? Dr. Akmal.
Dr. Akmal, the pemuda.
Yeah, he's quite divisive. His rhetoric's always that way. The culture wars that we have here. So if we can find, and which is why I must say I appreciate Anwar. I think Anwar's a much less divisive character. His tendency is not to be, I mean, he gets attacked by all sides, but he's much less divisive as a person. I mean, maybe you can argue that he's been going after the super rich or whatever he calls the ultra rich, but apart from that, Mahakaya and all those kinds of things. But I think generally he's of that disposition, much more, But is enough being done? I don't know. I ask you, I mean, do you think the country is being torn apart in the way that, say for instance, today they talk about the US in terms of kind of gender divide, that young women have moved liberal and young men have moved conservative. and this whole, you know, bro culture.
No, I saw this trend just after COVID in the US, where people are talking about gender and men, and how men are growing more lonely in America, how single women keeps on moving towards the left. And it became such a trend back in 2021, 2022. These days, a lot of content is being created specifically designed to talk about gender, gender roles, gender nuances, and so on, and the attributions of their gender roles to their communities. So much so that it's holding mainstream in terms of some of the, I guess, podcasts and content creators. I am now seeing that trend that I saw in America in 2021. I'm seeing that this year here in this part of the world, where the role of man and the role of women and so on.
Yeah.
I think that's going to be the flavor that needs to be talked about, because I'm single. I am on dating apps, and it's not easy, because it's true, the algorithm is as such where it is favoring the small number of men. So there is this thing called hypergamy. So I don't know whether I want to say this, but
yes,
tens and sevens and sixes and fives and twos and ones are going after the nines and tens of men. And then the ones of men, the fives, the sevens of, I'm not getting the pool at all.
So, yeah, so the question is, okay, I mean, that's an interesting dynamic. I was referring to it slightly different, the ways in which, you know, men are being pulled towards models like Andrew Tate. And so I know that Andrew Tate, like, wannabes in Malaysia. Yes.
I can name a few top of my head, but
and then you know, they might mix a bit of religion in that, but the idea is that this masculinistic, you know, is
toxic masculinity. If you ask me.
Yeah. So that's the label that, say, liberals might give of that.
I am a liberal.
Yes, and so am I. And I think the problem is that the response to it often is, again, similar to the way in which we respond to Trump, is to mock it, to deride it, to dismiss it.
To affix labels on it, I suppose.
And that isn't helpful, because that's exactly what drives those kind of young men towards Andrew Tate, because they find that nobody wants to listen to them. There's no empathy on this other side. The other side is very dogmatic. It's given to cancelling people at the drop of a hat. They're not really interested in engaging. You either sign on or you're outside this club. And so what happens when people are outside the club? They go and form their own club.
Yeah.
Right? And so I think that if we can avoid that, if our politics, you know, if the differences between, you know, secularists and liberals in Malaysia versus, you know, conservatives, religious conservatives are bridged, and there's a bit more empathy. We don't demonize the green states, and we, you know, as liberals, or the green states don't demonize liberals, which is something they do, of course. Then maybe the country has a better chance of going forward, I think.
You know, as you age, you become more wiser and less critical. I like you better nowadays. Yeah.
Less hypercritical, maybe.
Less hypercritical, and a lot more empathic.
Yeah. I think one, yes, maybe, you know,
it comes with age, what to do.
Yeah, I like the idea that I'm growing, even at my advanced age.
So you're growing laterally, is that what it
that's something I'm trying to fix. I did go for a swim this morning.
That was Shurat Kutan. If you want to hear more of him, you can't get enough of him at BFM radio. But for now, this is me signing off. If you want to learn more about some of our programs, just head on to astroawani.com for more information there. Until then, thanks very much for watching. Goodbye.